Welcome to our latest edition of our rock and roll podcast. We love it, don't we, Russ? And on the show today, well, it's a big one. It's a big one in so many different ways. We've got big bands, we've got big logistics of trying to get equipment across Europe. Behind, would you believe it, the Iron Curtain, using aeroplanes, aircraft. So who we got on the show today, Russ?
Well, we've got my old friend Jacek Slotala, who's sitting in Warsaw, Poland, and I had the privilege of working with him or helping him a little bit, not as much as probably I should have, but back in the day, it was 1989, and it was Pink Floyd in Moscow, and this is pre-Glasnost, or just around Gorbachev's time, when it was still pretty shut, and Jacek was instrumental in bringing a lot of bands, Western bands, to the Soviet Union, and with the ultimate one being obviously Pink Floyd. Before, I think I said 10 nights, my memory escapes me, but actually it was 5 nights. And
11.
11 nights, was it? Okay. There you go. Anyway, I'd like to just introduce Jacek. He's got lots to say and lots to share with us, and we're really excited to talk to Jacek because, we sometimes as we get older, we become a little bit more nostalgic about these things, and we look back and think, how the hell did I pull that one off? So, welcome, Jacek, and tell us a little bit about, please, how that all came about. How did you start doing and promoting artists behind the Iron Curtain?
I could say it's a very simple story because my aunt, my mother's cousin, she was very entrepreneurial, and back in the 60s, can you believe, she came up with an idea of actually printing postcards with singles, one-side singles of current hit, knocked off mainly from radio, and then the author's rights and publishing rights and stuff like this was completely ignored at that time. But what it made, it actually was allowed by the current regime in Poland as a kind of a safety fuse that young people had an access to the same thing as the Western music, as the Western young people had, more or less. Obviously, the other one was Jazz Jamboree, a autumn festival in Warsaw that is until today going on, and it's a very important event in Poland. So basically, I I had an access to music. I loved music, and I still love music. You don't stop loving music, and this is how it all started. And then when I got to university time, you obviously want to make some more money, and there was a Polish institution called Pagart that they had a monopoly in import and export of music, and they on a part-time terms they hired me to advise and to translate when the impresarios were coming to Poland, and they were trying to organize some concerts and stuff like that. And this is how I got involved. And this is how it started. He offered some groups for in Poland for touring, and it was convenient for Brian, as you know Brian very well, at the beginning, because I was paid by Pagart, and he didn't have to pay me, but I was his go for.
Yeah, we know Brian well, but I
Yes.
tell you, I think we both agree that Brian was very good at getting the acts, and you were very good at executing the logistics and doing the rest, which is
Oh,
actually really hard work.
absolutely. Brian was great in he had a fantastic relationship with the agency and the other providers and managers and agents of of artists, and he was good in arranging that. Then I was very good in actually working with artists on the ground, on the tour, because they always had their tour manager. But later, actually, when we really developed very well. They didn't even bring their tour managers because our tour managers were up to the standards and even a little bit more. We even bought a kitchen, a portable kitchen, which we ordered in States to tour with us, and that was my part of the deal. Brian was getting artists. I was marketing them with Gosconcert or Pagart or any other agency, and we were doing that.
So you were making things happen on the ground by the side of it, Jacek. And I guess in those days, trying to achieve what artists would like when they're on the road. You know, you mentioned about the kitchen. They want good food. They want comfortable hotels. How were you able to satisfy those demands of those artists when touring Russia?
That was a problem, yes. Obviously, when we were touring and when we had concerts booked in Moscow or in Leningrad at that time, today St. Petersburg, it was not that complicated because they had kind of ish international standard hotels, and there were, let me put it that way, there was nothing to be lavish as the rock stars were accustomed to touring in Western Europe, but they were acceptable. The biggest problem was actually food and eating. So this is why we had to buy our own equipment, and the first thing that we installed in the hall was always kitchen and catering, and we had two chefs from Poland trained in UK, and everyone was very happy. They got very good notes, and they really liked their food. Everybody was sort of, even at certain stage, we had people coming for breakfast to the hall because they liked the food that it was prepared there. We were shopping in Berlin, in West Berlin, and bringing it and trucking it all the way to Russia.
Winding back a little bit, obviously, in Russia, it was slightly different. There was an organization called Gosconcert, and
Yes.
you moved from Poland into Russia because I guess you saw it as another potential, well, huge market, massive market. I mean, the Soviet Union was just huge. And when that happened, what were the first bands of note that you introduced there? And I think the tours were quite long, weren't they?
It wasn't that easy, Russell. It wasn't that easy. You may not remember that. It took me almost 3 years because it was my idea, because Brian focused on Eastern Bloc countries like Poland, East Germany, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, sometimes Bulgaria, but very rarely. And that was his focus. He was afraid of going into Russia, Soviet Union at that time. In the meantime, I graduated university. I read law there, and my perspective and my understanding of Soviet Union was that something is changing there. Perestroika, and Gorbachev was making lots of changes. He was opening up in many areas. So I said, well, one of the areas that they have to open up is culture, and start the exchange. So I convinced Brian, and he said, okay, let's try. And I actually moved more or less to London, and from London I was going to Moscow to try to convince Gosconcert to allow us to bring Western bands. My door opener was a Polish gentleman, Richard Korzic, who passed away a few years ago, who was the main booking agent for Polish bands in Soviet Union, because this is what was allowed. Within the Soviet bloc, the exchange was quite quite large, and the Soviet artists were coming here, and Polish and Czech and German, and there was a lot of exchange. But Western, very in Eastern Europe, the Westerns were coming, but to Soviet Union, no. So I was trying to break that, and I thought that these people, they're young people, they are hungry like we were for good music, for something that they hear over the radio, or they get smuggled some tapes and records and stuff like that. So I thought there must be a market, and we have to open it. We have to bring what we have here, we have to bring it to Soviet Union. And I met beautiful people there, absolutely beautiful people, some good journalists that were helping me. There were some very good people, but I couldn't break for 2.5 years. I couldn't break Gosconcert because I was sort of badly rooted into people that were only concentrated on Eastern Bloc music. But finally they were saying, well, you know, this guy, never go to this guy because he is there for political reasons. He doesn't make any decisions, and you know, he's very much against Western culture. And it was Mr. Kisielov, who was the deputy director of Gosconcert. And I said, listen, this is my last time I'm going to Moscow after 2.5 years. I go talk to the guy straight. So I went to him. He says, oh, I see you here for quite a long time. What are you up to? And we started to talk because I spoke Russian, and I took classes of Russian to learn and be able to communicate with these guys in their language, because they somehow felt intimidated by the fact that somebody speaks English to them and they do not speak well English. So I preferred to speak broken Russian because that gave them this privilege of actually correcting me. And they say, well, you know, great that you made an effort and you speak Russian.
Yeah, respect.
No one of those guys from UK or US spoken Russian. So I was the only one that represented the British company, Baruchi, and spoke Russian. So therefore, I went to this Kisielov. They were saying he's political, he's KGB, God knows who he is. Doesn't matter. But he said, so what do you want? I said, well, we've got bands. This is the list of bands, and this is what we are trying to do, concerts. He said, so which one you would do first? So I looked at the list and I said, Wishbone Ash, because this is something that these people understand here. And they know this music and they like it. Young people like it. He said, do you think so? I said, yes, I spoken to the, whom do you speak to? I told it to the journalist. He said, well, good people. Yes, they understand. Okay, go to London. Let me think about it. So I went back to London, and by the time I got back, there was a telex. If you remember, we were communicating by telex from Gosconcert saying we're buying 10 concerts in Leningrad of Wishbone Ash. And this is how it all started. Okay. So this guy that for 2.5 years I was told, don't talk to him because he is the obstacle, he actually solved the problem. Within,
he was the door opener.
He opened the door. Yes, he was the brave guy who said, yes, I want the Western music to try to break into Soviet Union as it is today.
So you had
great success. It was a great success, phenomenal success.
You had Wishbone Ash. I mean, I worked with Wishbone Ash. I remember Steve Upton was the drummer. I knew him quite well.
Great guy, absolutely fantastic guy. I remember long evenings at the Polkovsky Gastinica Hotel when we were sitting and talking. Yes, Steve was a great guy, absolutely.
And also the guitarist, I can't remember. Well, both guitarists, Laurie Wise,
Jamie Crumpton.
Yeah, Jamie,
American guy.
Yeah, and then the guy who went to play with Tina Turner in the end, Laurie Wisefield or whatever, later on. Maybe he wasn't on that tour, he was later on. But anyway, great band, nice guys. So how long was that
very
first
easygoing,
tour?
Very easygoing.
How long was that first tour, Jacek?
It was 10 concerts only in Leningrad.
Oh, okay. So how
only in
did you?
Leningrad, and that time we didn't have catering. We didn't know what is the biggest problem, what is the biggest issues. We were learning. This was the brilliant thing is that we chose Wishbone Ash because these guys were easygoing, understandable. They were real perfect to work with, and. And after that, we learned that we need this, this, and that. Brian obviously was not convinced that it will go on because he wasn't sure whether the Wishbone Ash is something that you know, it's not a one-off, and he didn't want to invest at that time. But later we started doing other acts, and it went very well. It went very well.
Must have been a really big learning curve, that first series of dates in one location. That obviously helped with it being in one location, not having to embrace logistics of going across the country.
Exactly.
Yeah. How did you follow that?
I don't remember whether this was that was Precious Wilson or Smokey, but one of them. I can't remember the sequence, but we did Precious Wilson.
You did Susie Quattro.
Susie Quattro was later. Precious was first.
And you created your own band as well. Do you want to tell us a bit about that? The Lost Empires.
That was later. That was later when we did Smokey, Susie Quattro, Bonnie Taylor, Status Quo, everybody. And we couldn't think because the market at that time in Soviet Union, it wasn't Russia yet, it was Soviet Union still, was rather very complicated to cater. Why? Because, for instance, they didn't like soul music at all. We proposed Stevie Wonder. I'm sure Stevie Wonder would do perfectly now. Well, but then they said, well, not really. This is not our type of music, So it was very difficult at certain stage. And Jamie Crampton from Wishbone Ash, I stayed with Stephen and Jamie. I stayed in touch. And Jamie said, listen, I would like to tour in Siberia. I said, what are you talking about? I mean, logistics to get you to Siberia, it's a mission impossible. He says, listen, I want to go to Siberia and play music. These people also want music. And he sort of intoxicated me with that idea. And we started talking. He was in LA. He had his girlfriend at that time. I don't know whether he'd married or not because I lost touch with him, unfortunately. But Jamie was in LA and so enthusiastic about coming back and going. And I said, so whom would you do? He says, I can go solo with a Russian band. I said, no, that won't work. That won't work. Why don't we put together a band? He says, I can put together a band very quickly. So we started talking about it. And we did 8-track recordings, and we did 4 video recordings of the band. They wrote music, original music, and it turned to be a good music and a brilliant band. And I proposed this to Gosconcert, and I said, listen, this is an upcoming band in US, and they will be a huge hit. I gave the tape to Melodia, which is their record company. They issued, I don't know, I think 2 or 3 million records. And all of a sudden, the TV started to play the videos, and Gosconcert wanted to do a 100 concert tour, including Siberia. But because the Gosconcert was actually afraid about logistics and stuff, I said, why don't we fly the equipment? You have these huge planes and stuff. He says, no, the planes are they exclusively are run by the army. And so I had to go and speak to the army general to actually try to arrange the plane. So we started bargain. He said, okay, I'll give you the plane for 2 weeks, but you have to play 10 concerts for the army. I said, no, 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 2 concerts for the army. He said, no, 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 5 concerts for the army. And we finished with, I think, 4 concerts for the army. And we had it for over 2 weeks, I think 15 days, a big plane where we put the equipment, sound equipment, light equipment, everything in, plus the people in the army seats. So you can imagine how it was. And the bucket as a toilet.
Bucket to
Bucket with a
toilet.
lid. But
Flying in style.
I must say,
let me finish. And the only the fantastic thing about it is the name of the band. The name of the band was the Lost Empires. We named it the Lost Empires. I still have a tour jacket that Jamie made it for me, which says the Lost Empires Soviet tour.
Amazing.
Wow, that's a collector's item. Something cropped up there where you were saying about them desperately wanting to go to Siberia. What they could have done, the easiest route to that would have been put a placard against the government in Red Square. They would have gone very quickly, no, Jacek?
I tell you something. In a Red Square, when this German guy landed with his plane, we wanted to do Michael Jackson, but unfortunately, in a Red Square, we got permission from the mayor of and later the president of the of Moscow to do it. We started actually planning, and the crowd control company from London, they said, has to be a free concert. We were ready to do it, but unfortunately the local Pepsi Cola representative said, no, in Moscow people will pay $1,000 for a concert for Michael Jackson, so it doesn't have to be free concert. And Brian and myself, we took a decision that we're not going to take a risk if specialists for crowd control are telling us not to do this as a ticketed venue, so it has to be a free concert. And we pulled out, unfortunately.
I just had a thought there regarding what Russell was saying about doing a protest in Red Square. And okay, behind the Iron Curtain in those days, we know stories about the KGB and all the activities going on. Did you feel you were being spied upon? Especially, you got a plane off the military and flying a hairy rock band across the country. What was it like? And did you felt you were being sort of spied upon, and every phone call was being monitored, and those sort of activities?
Well, look. Yes, there was a lot of protest. We had a lot of political mingle and stuff like this. We tried not to get involved. We tried never comment that. We were sort of agnostic about, being a cultural ambassadors of the West.
Yeah,
that is it. We never got involved. We obviously had very let's put it this way, a very dubious interpreters who hardly spoke English, but they were interpreters touring with us and with our bands and solving the problems with police whenever they occurred. When the band, for instance, got frustrated, they couldn't speak to their wives for a week. They couldn't be connected on the phone with their wives in the UK, and in as a part of their rage, they threw the TV set out of the window, and then police intervened in the middle of the night. And it turned that I had to take one of those dubious interpreters who didn't speak good English, but was very effective in action. They went to the police, and police immediately released the guys because she was probably higher ranking or anything like that.
Those guys,
obviously, we were surrounded.
Yeah. So your guys throwing TV out of hotel rooms were from the school, the Keith Moon Rock and Roll School of.
I'm sure that was the case.
Yeah.
The boys were. I think everybody was sort of paranoid about it, that they're being listened, they're being watched or recorded. So we never had a major accident or a major incident in that, and we basically tried not to get involved in politics. We were trying to give the young people in Soviet Union what they wanted at the moment from the West, a bit of a feeling that they are part of the rest of the world. They are like
Yeah,
the
sure.
rest of the world. They do. They listen to the same music and they have access. You know, when we made the status quo concerts in Moscow, because they didn't want to tour, and it was such a huge success because they all were singing aloud the same music. Same thing happened with Floyd. So,
A
you know,
fascinating insight
that's what
to
it was. It was a
yeah.
part. We gave them what they wanted, and I think that uh, this sort of uh, made it easy also for that time regime, that there was less maybe tension, because that tension
Cool.
was eased up by the concerts available, which we made it happen.
Yeah.
Fascinating insight
I
behind
don't
the scene.
I don't know if you remember, Jacek. You obviously do, because you used to provide them for us. It used to work both ways. You used to provide them with artists, but Simon Walton and I, working in the Gulf, we used to get artists from you,
Yes,
like the Bolshoi Ballet and
yes,
the Lithuanian Ballet and the Red Army Choir and all Cossacks and everything. And because they wanted much needed dollars from us. But talking about this KGB thing, I remember when we used to get the list of personnel, it was spot the KGB guy, because on the list, he had some stupid designation that made no sense at all. It's like, yeah, he's the guy. And all the dancers, of course, all the young guys on the crew were chasing all the ballet dancers, but they were very aware that this one guy or two guys on the tour were keeping an eye out, and there was all this sort of cloak and dagger thing in our mind about, but quite interesting. We were aware of it and made a thing of it and had a joke about it, but it worked the other way as well,
yeah, absolutely. Because like Boris Baryshnikov, who on the tour of Bolshoi, when they were in New York, he
Oh yeah,
defected, and few
yeah,
of these people defected earlier. And I think that these KGB agents were there to make sure that nobody does it again.
yeah, yeah,
But I think that the optimism at that time when we were working with them, the optimism within the country of Soviet Union, that something is changing, that Gorbachev gave it to them, a hope that they are opening, that something is changing,
yeah.
made it less possible that they would be defecting, because there is no better place than home. So,
Of course.
and I'm talking through my personal experience of talking to these people, and
Yeah,
this is what they were saying to me: this is not the time to defect, this is
yeah,
time to wait for changes.
yeah. Just
And
moving
we
on a
gave
little.
them that hope.
Yeah, you did. Just moving on a little bit then, Jacek, which I think a lot of our listeners, especially Floyd fans, would want to really know. How did the Floyd thing come about? How difficult was it to? That was a big fish to hook, and was there reluctance? Was there, what were the early stages we can get Floyd, and you really made it happen? Can you tell us a bit about that?
uh yes. It was my idea, because the thing was that Pink Floyd was the band, not Rolling Stones, not Led Zeppelin. not Black Sabbath, but the Pink Floyd. They were the band in Soviet Union. Maybe what I think, and talk to several journalists and friends among young people, their Wall album was very symbolic for them.
Yeah.
And breaking that wall this is probably the message that they were getting and taking it through the nation and through the society. And I said to Brian, can we do Floyd's? They are on a tour. He said, no, this is too big. You know, Brian, this is too big. We can't do it. I said, listen.
Are you mad, man? What are you thinking?
Yeah. Yeah. You sound like Brian. You say, you're mad. You're mad. You don't know. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. Yeah.
You leave the artist to me.
I said, Brian, I can do it. I have a team of people that can do it. No, man. I said, talk to whom you have to talk to. To the agency was booking the whole tour. And they said yes.
Was that Pete Wilson?
No. What was his name?
Oh no, he was Harvey Goldsmith. What was his name?
It was Harvey. Pete Wilson was Harvey. He's still ahead of the agency. Just slipped off my mind at the moment because I wasn't dealing that much with him. It was Brian's responsibility. Anyway, and they said yes. So when they said yes, Brian got excited that he can get a good deal. So he got a good deal. And he said, logistically, it's impossible. But since we already done the Lost Empires and we had the army plane once, so now Arthur Matikian, who was the import department, said, listen, it will be much easier for me to get the plane because logistically to travel from Athens to Moscow by trucks, 56 trucks, which this was their equipment. I remember still this very well. It would take probably about 10 days. It's impossible. So they said, no, why don't we set one of the Antonov? We put everything into the Antonov. We send a plane for people, and that's what's going to happen. And everything.
I seem to remember you had two of them.
Two.
They're massive. I just to interject. Sorry, Jacek, just to interject there. My job that you very graciously gave me
was to coordinate the airport.
Yeah, the bump in and the load in and the load out.
Yes.
And so I spent 48 hours on the airport in Moscow on the tarmac.
Sorry, but you were part of the success. You were part of the success.
No, but the interesting thing is at 2 o'clock in the morning, you see some very interesting nationality planes coming and loading up some very dubious looking boxes to go back and fight their wars. So
there's another history connected with this, because normally what they did the customs clearance at the airport, and if you remember, there was no customs clearance.
No.
For very one reason. When the plane was landing with the band and the crew, a man from the Gosconcert came to me and he says, Jacek, there are two messages for you. One is good, the other is not that good. I said, give me the not that good. He says, we're short of 100 hotel rooms in Hotel Rossiya because there is a political rally that was called in the last minute in Moscow. And all the deputies and all the members of parliament and everybody came today to Moscow, and they have priority to stay in the hotels. So we were knocked out. 100 rooms were knocked out, and we are short 100 rooms.
Wow.
I got wet pants, and I said, what can I do? I said, what's the good news? All concerts are sold out. I turned around. I looked at because I had a personal driver who wasn't connected with the Gosconcert. I met him through the network, and it was a Armenian, Georgian Armenian guy, very, very, very dedicated and very honest, very good guy, who always holds some amount of cash for me in rubles that I didn't want to leave in the hotel. And I said, bring me the bag. And I took 4 interpreters whom I trusted. And I said, you take that bag, you go to the hotel, knock at every fucking door, whoever it is, if he's a member of parliament, minister, I don't give a shit. Just go there, knock at the door, give him 100 rubles and tell him to get the fuck out of here.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
He said, 100 rubles? You crazy? Maybe 20. I said, give him 100 rubles. I want to be, at that time, 180 rubles was a monthly salary.
Wow.
Okay?
Wow.
So
Incredible.
180, 200 rubles was a monthly salary. So what has happened then? Within 3 hours, I had my 100 rooms. They took the 100 rubles and they went to another hotel somewhere on the outskirts of Moscow, wherever, you know. But I had my 100 rooms. But I had another problem. They already used these bloody rooms, and there was not enough people to clean those rooms.
Oh gosh.
So here I was less generous. I gave, okay, give those ladies 20 for each room to do it immediately. So they cleaned up the rooms, everybody, but I needed time. I needed time.
Yeah.
So what I did, I went to customs office in Sheremetyevo, and I said, guys, I give you 50 tickets, but we will do a customs bridge. Russell will load everything into the trucks. You seal it, goes to the venue, and you do the customs at the venue. 50 tickets? Yes, you have it. So we're doing this. Why I needed it? Very simple. Then I went to the band, to what was his name? Robin, right? Robin, the tour manager. Robin, whom I knew from previous arrangements. And I said, Robin, your guys cannot go to the hotel because they have to be, the customs officers request that everybody is with their equipment, which was bullshit. But I needed them in the hall, not in the hotel, because the hotel was not ready. So they were not very happy with this, but they stayed with the customs. And then each guy that was released by the customs went to the hotel where they had already a room. Gradually, the rooms were adding up, and in the morning, they were all ready. It was 100 rooms, so, you know, that was missing.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's
4,000
happened.
hotel, huh?
Sorry?
The 4,000 room hotel that was.
That doesn't exist anymore.
Doesn't exist, yeah.
But yeah. Thank God,
Wow.
thank God they pulled it down and they built something else. But anyway, you know, and we had lots of problems, and Brian came there as well, as you know. So I was looking for Brian to help me with something, and then, you know, I woke him up at 11 o'clock in the morning, and he, in his pajama, opened the door and says, "What is it? What is it? Well, why are you walking? Why do you?" I said, "Listen, we have a tour. You said it's important. Yeah, but you cover it. No, leave me alone."
That sounds like the Brian I know.
I think, I mean, there's some amazing aspects to putting shows on the road there. I think you got 2 middle names now, Mr. Innovation and Mr. Cultural Diplomacy connoisseur. Incredible insights there. I'm just wondering, going back to the Pink Floyd and their massive show, you know, they had the flying pigs, they had planes crashing, and political undertones with their performances. Was there any pressure on you to say with the band, they can do this or they can't do that, that's got to be taken out? Any sort of censorship involved?
Sorry, I didn't hear you very well.
Was there any sort of Regarding Pink Floyd and the shows, I mean, the show, huge production, so that's another story. But in terms of the music, the messaging they were put out, very political. Was there any pressure on the band to censor what they were performing, what they could say?
Nothing.
No.
There was no pressure. There was nothing, as I remember. I think the daughter of Gorbachev or Gorbachev himself came to the concert. The critics were phenomenal. There was no pressure of what they were performing, what they were saying, what they were doing. There was no pressure whatsoever. There was something else. If you remember, Russell, there was a tragic accident in Siberia. Was a chemical factory blew up, and there was a train coming with children from a holiday camp passing by that, and that train was affected by that explosion. And there was a national mourning in the country, and one day we couldn't play the concert. And David Gilmour and the band, I spoke to them and I said, guys, we can't play. We have a 1 day off because of this and that. Unfortunately, the tickets will have to be returned. And I said, no, I will talk to Robin. Robin will talk to the crew, and we will talk to crew to put it at the end, and that will shorten their packing days with packing time that they have, but they will squeeze that and we'll make it in time for Helsinki, because the next gig was in Helsinki. And they did it. So that one missing day, that was a national mourning day, they put at the end of it as to replace that missing day, to not disappoint people. So they were received very well. And
I think that was an amazing gesture on behalf of
absolutely. I think David never had chance later to speak to him, but it was his immediate reaction. He didn't have to think twice.
Very good.
You know, he was saying just, he said, Jacek, don't worry about it. I have an idea what we do. We speak with Robin, and we will do it at the end. And
talking about just while I think about it, Jacek, about Robin and the crew. As you know, I only had stuff to do at the beginning and at the end, and in the middle, I used to just come in to eat food. And in fact, I only ever saw the first half of the Pink Floyd show on the first night and the last half on the last night. Fantastic show, and I love Pink Floyd, but I only ever used to go to the venue to have my lunch or whatever. And I remember, I don't know if you remember this guy. He's a bit of a legend in sort of road crew history. A guy called Andy Ledbetter. Now, Andy Ledbetter, I knew because he was always on the big tours. And Andy Ledbetter was a guy who you called a boffin. He would sit at the side of the stage. You'd usually have a soldering iron in his hand, and you'd see him there at all these big concerts. And you know, hi Andy, what are you doing? What are you mending now? Sort of thing. You know, you'd always be mending something. And I remember in Moscow, because I was bored, I went over to the stage and I saw Andy. Oh, Andy, how you doing? And he told me a story which I never forgot, which I thought was hilarious. He told me that I said, "What are you mending?" He said, "Well," he said, "I'm doing this and this." He said, "But," he said, "I'll have to let you into a little secret." He said, "It's not always like that on these tours." Now, he was a guy in those days that used to command £2,000 a week, which was a lot of money in those days, because he was brilliant. He was a mad professor. And he said, "Yeah," he said, "Well, I've been on tours before where I've nothing to mend." I said, "Really?" I said, "But that's all right." He said, "Well," he said, the most famous one was the Last Wings tour, which was in about 1981. Paul McCartney and Wings, with you know, his first wife and stuff. And he said they used to come in for sound check every day, and Paul used to say to me, he used to say to his wife, he'd say to Linda, "Oh, look at that Andy, always mending something. He's there with his soldering iron. What a great guy." And he said he was paying me $2,000 a week for it. He said he didn't realize that the whole tour I didn't mend one thing. I was designing an alarm system for my house. And they all thought he was mending stuff for the band, but he wasn't. He was getting paid $2,000.
He was doing this for himself.
Yeah. He designed a new alarm system for his house. So good old Andy. But anyway,
Right.
So
Yeah.
it was.
The other character on that tour was the guy who ran Eat to the Beat.
Oh yeah, the catering.
And that was actually that was a legend in UK.
The Geordie guy.
Sorry,
was it the guy from Newcastle?
Yes,
the Geordie guy. Yeah, I'd done several tours with him as well.
Yeah.
He's very fun.
He actually trained our chefs, and
Right.
and they were big fans of him because he said he had a technology of actually preparing catering for bands that they are always happy.
Yeah.
And Eat to the Beat, he had 120 people to feed, plus guests and everybody else. So amazing.
Yeah, I remember the loadout with all the trucks that we had to load quickly and get them off to Finland. I remember that. But I also remember fondly, you were so busy, Jacek, but you were so gracious. You used to invite me.
I never seen the whole concert.
No, I used to come to your suite. You used to allow me to come to your suite, and it was chaos. You were ringing and shouting at people in Russian and that. But you'd put your hand over the receiver and say, "Help yourself to some Russian champagne." And I used to come and drink. And in those days, my palate wasn't so sophisticated. That Russian champagne was amazing.
It was pretty good. Yes, it was pretty good. And then I will never forget that once I was in Russia on one of the tours. I can't remember what it was. I had a birthday, 10th of August, and on 10th of August, I like the caviar, the Russian caviar, and then they say, "You will stop liking it. We have a surprise for you." I couldn't. Why? What will happen? And they brought a big bowl, but I mean big bowl, about 5 kilos or maybe more of caviar. I said, "Well, that's for today. What about tomorrow?" They started to laugh. But the crew, the artists, everybody, and it was really gone that day. That was my birthday. I think the Russians, the Soviets, they really appreciated what I've done, that I managed to convince the authorities and everybody else that they should allow a Western music and a Western style of concerts.
So on that note, I'd like to ask you something. I mean, you've achieved so much in cultural exchange between the West and the Soviet Union. What do you think was your biggest achievement? And to go along with that, what is perhaps one of your fondest memories of all that hard work you put in?
Phil, it's very. I'm thinking about it now. It's difficult to say. Obviously, Pink Floyd was, from professional point of view, something that I will always prize as a big achievement.
Yeah.
But in terms of emotion, at that time, I was so busy, as Russell brilliantly described, and I was so much involved. I'm a perfectionist by nature, so everything has to be done perfectly.
Sure.
Everything has to be neat and as it is. I think one of the biggest things was my first tour ever that I was asked to do for Pagart in Poland, was Procol Harum and Gary Brooker, which I think at that time, it was after 1968 Rolling Stones concert in Warsaw, which I was as a kid attending that paying a bribe to a guy who let me in from the back door, and I I went to see this, and then it was in 80s the first Western band again allowed in Poland, and that was a very big achievement that I managed to put the whole tour together and work it well, because again it was like, Soviets were not prepared for that. Poland was not prepared for anything like Procol Harum. We did 15 concerts around Poland.
Wow.
And then the third thing would be probably the tour of Charles Aznavour, because he was such a great guy and a phenomenal person, and to make him happy and to make people understand what is he doing, and seeing people appreciating that, it was brilliant. It was very good achievement. And then last but not least, I think it was Tina Turner's return into stage, and we did a warm-up tour and the main rehearsals in Warsaw, in Torwar, when she was coming back with Private Dancer tour before release of the record yet. And we sold almost like a 90% of tickets only for those, but we managed to do two videos for the television, but also for the management of Tina to see what else they have to fix, what else they have to correct. We did this in Warsaw, we did that in Katowice, in Prague, and I think she went to Middle East as well, right? You had her.
Yeah,
She did.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that was incredible, because she came without even a backline, without PA system, without backline, nothing.
No.
Logistically, that was very difficult as well, because we had to provide everything what she needed. But she was a phenomenal artist. I mean, phenomenal person to work with. She never complained. She would be saying, Jacek, take it easy. I can work with this. Don't
Very
worry.
good.
I can do this. I can do that. You see, I need 2 hours more because the girls need to, the backing vocals need to rehearse. Please hold the people in the hall. She was a human artist, if you know what I mean.
Perfectionist like you.
Phenomenal artist.
Yeah.
So I
She
would
lived
say Pink Floyd, Tina, Procol Harum, and Charles Aznavour. These are my biggest achievements.
Fabulous insight. I know this podcast theme is back in the USSR, but let's stay with your home country at the moment, Poland, because very important time, a lot of changes. You've alluded to a few there. Solidarity and your relationship at one stage with the first Polish president of Solidarity, Lech Walesa. So you became an advisor to him? Rock and roll or culture or what?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, funny that you say that. Nobody remembers that. I hardly remember that. Yes, I was invited by his Minister for Economic Development to a group of advisors, and I was advising to the President Wałęsa for about 6 months to his office. I was serving basically to his office, and I understood, like few of us that were doing that politics is not for me. I mean, I'm a straightforward person. I'm a perfectionist, and I like to do things where they are. With work, what I do not only is appreciated, but it makes sense. In politics, it's not exactly that. So it wasn't for me, and among other people, I also resigned after about 6 months.
So Jacek, I have to share one thing with you. You probably don't remember telling me this, but I was quite impressed when you told me, when I met you about 20 years ago, and you said, "Oh yeah, I was at one point I was an advisor to Lech Wałęsa." And I was like really impressed with this. And I said, "Well, why'd you give a job like that up?" And you said, "Well, I was advisor, but you never took my advice." And I found that really quite funny.
Well,
And
that's what I said.
no, that's what you told me. And I had the opportunity in Qatar of working with the minister, a lovely guy. And on my business card, I had advisor. It was to do with events, and I was his advisor. It was for National Day. And one day I went into his office and I said, "Oh, I need to get some new business cards." And he's like, what are you bothering me? Just ask my secretary. What do you?" I said, no, I want to change my designation." And he said, "What do you mean?" He said, "What do we call you now?" I said, "Advisor." He said, "Yeah, what's wrong with that? It's a good title." I said, "Well, you never take my advice." And I got that from you, Jacek. And he did a double take. He did a double take, and then he burst out laughing. He said, "Come on." He said, "What do you want to be called?" I said, "Well, call me a consultant." I said, "Because you always consult me. But you
don't take my advice."
Exactly. So he said, "Sure." He said, "Get out of my office." So it was that's from you, Jacek. Bless you for that. That was a great one.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
And I'll just share one.
Good that you took my advice.
I took your advice. Yeah. I must just share one thing, which is totally off on a tangent, which Phil will tell you, we go off on tangents all the time, which you never knew about. But I was touring the Gulf, and Brian, it was coming up to Christmas, and Brian said, "Do you go to Q8?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going to Q8 next week." I can't remember what act it was with. And he said, "There's a Louis Vuitton shop there." He said, "I want to buy a briefcase for Jacek." And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "They're quite expensive." He said, "Just buy it out the float." And I said, "Okay." So anyway, I wandered into the Louis Vuitton shop, never been in one before, just a farmer boy from the south of England. I don't know what a Louis Vuitton is. I was absolutely horrified that this briefcase is probably £5,000 or £6,000 now, 10,000 even. It was £1,000. I think it was £1,100. I was like, wow, it was nearly all my float and a little bit more. So anyway, I bought this briefcase, I brought it back, and it was Christmas time. And I was going off for Christmas, and I put it under my desk with a little, and I told Brian, I said, the briefcase under my desk. He said, "Oh, well, I'm not around. I'll pick it up." Anyway, over Christmas, the office was broken into, and your briefcase was stolen, and Brian made me pay for it because I hadn't officially given it to him.
Oh.
And I had to wait. I had to wait 2 months.
This briefcase is connected with Pink Floyd. Funny enough,
is it?
Yeah, because when I was convincing or working on convincing Brian about the doing the Pink Floyd and going into big acts like that and Stones and Floyd and thing, he says, if you do the Pink Floyd, you get a Louis Vuitton best briefcase from me as a gift. You're not going to do it. He risked that.
Yeah, but so I had to wait for the insurance.
So when I did it, he had to find a way of buying it cheap.
No, but I had to wait for the insurance to get my money back.
Brilliant.
Yeah, good old Brian.
Amazing.
Anyway, Jacek, what an amazing thing. I mean, I got in touch with you a while back, a few weeks ago, whenever it was, and we had a good old natter. And I did say to you, as you get older, you get a little bit nostalgic. And we've spoken on this podcast to a lot of people who say the same. I mean, Jake Duncan in the Tour Managers once was saying, I look at my shelf and I see all over the last 55 years, all the tours I put together, and I've still got all the itineraries. And I think, was that me? How did I do that? Where did I get the energy from? And don't you think like that sometimes? It's crazy the things we used to do, because it wasn't as easy as it is now, for sure.
Look, absolutely, absolutely, I do. But I morphed into it somehow, because what happened when we finished touring, when Soviet Union turned into Russia, and when the different groups of interest started to be interested in culture that we actually developed in the concert life and venues we developed, they were coming to speak to me and to Brian. We will look after you, you give us 10%, and we basically escaped. We left it because we didn't want to get involved with local mafia, or however you want to call that, groups of interest. I turned my interest into Poland, and I built a first private record company in Poland. Then I turned into digital recording for classical music, and it gave me a lot of pressure in terms of meeting deadlines and producing music. I produced over 100 records, and it was a great time. In the meantime, I also did the J. Walter Thompson in Central Europe, and I was running that as well. So I had a lot of things to do, and when I finish something, I close the book. It's a read book. It's the book that I have already read, but I feel nostalgic about concerts, especially now when my daughter had married a guy he's a Camille, my son-in-law is a very good and gifted musician, and he does concerts and he does recordings, and I support him as much as I can if he needs me, obviously. But all artists, they have their egos and they are fragile, so I try not to step in too much, but this is but it also gives me that vibe that I had, a recording studio, a concert that he's doing, great guy, great music that he does, and I'm still in touch. Plus, at the back, you don't see this, but I've got 5,000 CDs and about 1,000 black records. I still listen to the music. I'm still up to the speed. I'm not getting old. If you're asking me, Russell, if I'm getting old, I'm not.
No.
I'm just getting old, but not old.
On that note of being in touch, and a final question from me before we wrap things up, I would really like to thank you so much for spending your time with us and all those insights. It's been fascinating and brilliant. But as Russell said, things are a lot easier now when it comes to touring, putting on big shows. And even though you're sort of perhaps removed from it, but still in touch, I mean, you're removed because you're so busy doing other things, and you said you closed the book. Has there been anything over the last 10, 15 years, a show production, which has really impressed you, which you felt, oh, I would love to have been involved with that?
Yes. I've seen phenomenal concerts of U2 in Stockholm. I was invited by the promoter in Live Nation, who actually, they stepped into Central Europe, and Todd, who is a great guy, he's doing phenomenal work, and he put up shows. He's, from time to time, he's inviting me to the concert because he knows, he appreciates the fact that he actually took over my crew even. So I got invited to Stockholm for their concert, and it was such a phenomenal, such a complicated show.
Yeah.
They had 2 stages, fantastic, and this was something that I said, oh, I wish to be a part of that. Yes.
Okay.
And always when I have a chance to go to the Rolling Stones concert, I love Stones. That's my favorite band. I always always think, why didn't we do the Stones? Why didn't we do the Stones? I like that.
So much energy on stage from the Stones, phenomenal. I've seen them a few times. So anyway, once again, from me, thank you very much indeed for joining us on this podcast.
Yeah,
And I know
It was a
Russell's got a
pleasure.
few
It
things
was a
to
pleasure
say as well.
and a nostalgic, and there was a pleasure talking to you guys.
Thank you very much.
It was a really nostalgic trip back, over 30 years.
Yeah. Russell, over to you, mate.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yats, I don't want to embarrass you, but I'll say this for our listeners' benefit, Phil's benefit. I've known you a long time, and we're obviously periodically bumping into each other again and stuff. But what I would say, through all your achievements, and they are absolutely incredible. I mean, CEO of J. Walter Thompson in itself is amazing. You know, advisor to the president of Poland, Pink Floyd, and all the other things we've spoken about. But you've never lost that nice, approachable touch, and that's something I'm, on a human level, I'm really appreciative of. I feel if I turn up on your doorstep, you'll always offer me a cup of tea, and we'll have a chat, and we'll pick up where we left off. And don't lose that, mate. Don't lose that, because you're
Absolutely.
a great guy.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. But I think I got it from my ancestors and our history of our family going back from the time that we've been crusted in 1435.
Oh dear, oh dear! Don't give me a history lesson. You'll lose me. But appreciate it so much, and we'll keep in touch. Huh? Take it easy.
Please stay in touch. Bye bye. Thank you very much. Bye.
It's only rock and roll. A Phil Blizzard radio production.
Available on Apple, Amazon, Angami, Spotify, Deezer, Google, and all good podcast channels, and also now on YouTube. And if you would like to have a podcast production for your organisation, do get in touch with me. Drop me an email, philblizzardmedia@gmail.com.
A Phil Blizzard radio production.